This is the Cash Value Solutions Podcast, where your hosts, Jason Pohlmeyer and Kyle Mann, shed light on little-known money truths to help you take control of your financial future and become your own banker. Subscribe, rate, and review the show, and check us out at cashvaluesolutions.com.
All right, guys, we're still going on the book review of Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. Where are we at today, Kyle?
Today we are talking about the problem. And in this section, Nelson, he discusses the all-American family is what he calls it. So he wants to just be relatable to the American public, and to do the IBC, you don't have to be rich at all. He just wants to talk about the average person, what the average person does, and how we can help the average person.
Yeah, he doesn't want this to sound like this is only for a select few people that IBC can work for, right? Mm-hmm. This whole life insurance is available to anybody as long as you're insurable. And even if you're not insurable, there is likely a way to get you set up so you can practice the infinite banking concept. Mm-hmm. So that's what Nelson's talking about is, hey, whether you're part of the all-American family or whether you're somebody that makes $1 million a year, this can work for you.
Yes, there's really not anybody that I can think of that this could not work for. You just have to have a little cash. I mean, and like we talked about in our previous episode, your imagination is the most limiting factor.
Yeah, and what do you need cash for? To capitalize the policy, right? You got to get started.
Yep.
So, okay. Nelson laid this out as a 29-year-old male that after tax is making $28,500 a year. And Nelson breaks it down to 4 different areas that this man is spending his dollars. So there's autos. Everybody, or a lot of people, drive vehicles. Housing. He's talking about owning a house in this example. Living expenses. Living expenses included things like clothes, groceries, charitable contributions, boat payments, casualty insurance on cars, vacations, all those types of things in your life. Mm-hmm. Living expenses, okay? And the last thing was savings. Now, at the time Nelson wrote this, he was being very generous, and he's saying, for this example, that this young male is saving 10% a year.
Yeah, usually he said it was the average savings rate in America was right around 5%. And so, yeah, he was saying that for this example, he would up it to 10%, and 20% would be spent on transportation, 30% would be on housing, and then the remaining 40% would go to their living expenses. And these weren't just pulled out of the blue. He did research on this.
Yeah, Nelson took some time, researched this, and he put together this own study of his. Mm-hmm. And as he said, this doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, even though interest rates change, the volume and amount of interest leaving people's personal economy doesn't seem to change.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, we talked about this a little earlier that at first, when we first read this section, that we thought that these numbers and some of this might have been too high, but then we thought about it a little more and, about what we know in our personal lives, like, man, this is close.
Right. So let's just look at the first example that he gives us, Kyle. It's a vehicle, and we don't need to go into the nitty-gritty of the numbers, but he's saying that we purchased this vehicle with a loan, and it's a 8.5% loan. But what's the volume of interest after 4 years of paying off this vehicle? What's the volume of interest that left this person's economy?
20%.
It's unreal how much higher the volume of interest is that leaves somebody's economy than the actual rate is.
And think of one time that you've ever been told about this. I mean, we're in a low interest environment right now, and people will say, "Oh, I got my car for 4%. I got my house for 4%." And all they can think about is 4%. But that's not the total volume of what they're paying on the total amount.
And it's really common that, 0% financing for 6 months or maybe a couple years or something like that. What's going on there?
Yeah, they're just baking it into the price.
Exactly. I just wrote a blog. Can't remember the title off the top of my head, but I included something about when General Motors went broke. Okay, in I believe it was 2005. This article stated that they had lost 10.4 or 10.6 billion dollars. $10.6 billion they lost. And their financing arm at the time, they don't own this anymore, but at the time was GMAC. And GMAC had a profit of $2.4 billion. $666 million came from auto financing. How can you be that profitable and have 0% financing, Kyle?
Yeah, they're baking into the price.
It doesn't exist. It's another, I don't know exactly the way to put it, another form of enticing people into a purchase.
Marketing, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. And then Nelson also goes on to say, if you're a person that likes to lease vehicles, it's even worse, okay? First of all, you don't have equity building up in a potential trade-in. And think about it this way. Would I lend you a vehicle, Kyle, and not make money while I'm doing that? Not try to make money while I'm doing that?
I would hope not.
Okay. That's the point Nelson's making is if somebody's going to own this vehicle and lease it to you, they're going to have to make money, okay?
Mhm.
You pay interest whether you're paying cash or going to the loan. It costs money, right?
Yep.
So this owner has to finance this vehicle. And obviously, he's doing it because he thinks he can make money.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of what the number is, we just know it costs more to lease a vehicle than it does to own a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then another thing, needless to say, is a lot of times people may trade off a vehicle before the loan is up. Well, that just makes those numbers even higher.
Yep.
Percentage-wise, the volume is a higher percentage of the purchasing price.
The
then.
interest volume, yep.
Yep. So, okay, what's next, Kyle?
So next we're going to move into his mortgage example.
Okay. So what should we highlight here, Kyle? What needs to be said about this for our listeners?
We're talking about the volume of interest again, and he talks about how a lot of people will buy a house and then within 5 years, usually less than 5 years, they'll move to a different house. Then they'll get another mortgage. And, this process can kind of repeat itself.
Right. And when you have a mortgage, what are you paying heavily up front when you're paying that loan balance down?
Yeah, a very high percentage is going to interest and very low percent is going to your principal.
Exactly. If you guys can't tell already, Nelson is trying to make it vividly clear to you that the rate at which you finance something is really immaterial. It has to do with the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so Nelson came up with 86% of people's money that they're spending on a housing situation is going towards interest.
Mm-hmm.
Just staggering. And
Yeah.
And just to add some color to this, okay, I'm 27 years old, and I have friends that are buying houses right now. I currently do not own a house. I'm renting. But I have friends that are buying houses now, and I have several friends that have already purchased their second house.
Mm-hmm.
When I first read this book, I did believe that Nelson overstated this, but the older I get, the more I think, wow, Nelson, he really did do his research on this,
Mm-hmm.
and he really did understand what the common thing is going on in America today.
Yeah, and he kind of came to the conclusion that about 86% of every dollar paid when you're moving out, prior to 5 years is around 86%.
86, 86%. That's including interest, and he also included closing costs in there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because it costs money to close on a home loan.
Mm-hmm.
So, unreal. really. And
Yeah.
and I know that everybody thinks, well, my house is appreciating and stuff like that, and that makes up for it. That's really, from this discussion, what we're talking about right now is a completely different subject than what we're talking about. Right now is just how you finance things in your life, where the dollars that you have to spend after taxes go.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
Next, we go on to the spending pattern with the living expenses. Now, this includes the things where I was talking about boat payments, credit card balances, charitable donations and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This volume of interest is nearly as much as they're paying on autos.
Yeah. Nelson came up with that, the average person is spending about 34.5 cents per dollar on interest.
Yeah. When we add up living expenses, auto expenses, and housing expenses, the average person is spending 34.5 cents of every disposable dollar on interest. That's money that they will never see work for them again.
Yeah. And if 10% of that dollar is getting saved, look at that, 34.5 cents compared to 10 cents. And we're worried about high rates of return on that 10 cents.
Right. I mean, okay, so Kyle just made a great point. We only save 10% of our money, and yet 34.5 cents of every dollar is leaving us. And yet we're chasing 10, 11, 12% rates of return. Let's try to really work down to the nuts and bolts of this, okay, Kyle? Do you think that it's possible that you could earn 34.5% rate of return on some investment that you aren't educated about?
No.
Okay. I say aren't educated about because a lot of times people will place money in qualified plans. And do we have any idea, a lot of times, even where that money is being, what target date fund it's going into?
Well, usually they're put in magical mutual funds that are going to make me at least 12%.
Right? Okay. Just trying to make the point that a lot of times we think that we're saving, but we're actually investing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's actually going on in a qualified plan. That's not saving because you can lose money.
Yes, the difference between saving and investing. Investing, there's a chance of loss, and saving, there is no chance of loss.
Thank you. Okay. That's the point that I'm trying to make right there. Okay, so backing up again, 34.5%. Can we get that year after year after year after year? I'm
highly doubt it.
I don't think that I could if I'm investing in something that I'm not educated in and I'm expecting somebody else to do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Could I even get 25? Could I get 20, 15? Would I be happy with 10?
Maybe once in a great while. I mean, you might get lucky, but yeah, not consistently.
Right. It's not easy to achieve those type of returns, especially in something that you're not educated in.
Yeah, we're not saying it's impossible. Like if you are a real estate guy, like it's not impossible to do that consistently, but you know what you're doing. I mean, real estate.
Exactly. You've spent time and educated yourself on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to close out my thought here. This comes from Dalbar. It was a report from Dalbar, DALBAR. It's the 2020 Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior. And they found that over the past 20 years that ended December 31st, the average or typical investor in equity mutual funds has gotten only a 4.25% annual return. That doesn't take into account inflation, and that doesn't take into account the market crash that just happened here in March and April of 2020.
Yikes.
That's a far cry from 10% even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm done riding that horse, Kyle. You want to take over?
All right. Yeah, that kind of closes one out. Nelson, he gives us an example, which he talks about an airplane. So he talks about how a lot of us, we fly into the headwind.
What is the headwind?
The headwind is all the interest we're paying to all the third parties, the banks, everyone else.
Okay. So keep walking me through this. Explain this airplane example to me.
So Nelson talks about, wanting to fly from Birmingham to Chicago. Okay. The plane can go 100 mile an hour, but right now there's a headwind of 345 mile an hour. And so
what happens when you take off in that?
Well, you're going to be heading the opposite way at 245 mile an hour. Okay.
So what should we do?
So we should wait. We should have some patience. And as he speaks, as he talks about, have some patience. Wait for this headwind to get by.
Right. The weather system's going to move on, right?
The weather system will move on. And then that pressure system will eventually create a tailwind for you. And so to kind of relate this back, he's saying, take some patience, do some studying, learn what you want to invest in, what you want to pursue as a career, and then build upon that. Don't just jump in and battle, and things that you don't know, and take a look at where most of your money is going, like the interest. Like, hey, how can I recapture some of this interest?
Absolutely. And so again, like going back to the airplane example too, Nelson's saying, okay, have some patience. And then, so what happens now? We had patience. The airplane can still only fly 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we think this is the best position that we could possibly be in. This is where all the financial entertainers in the world will argue about where you should put your money. Well, I can get you 8. I can get you 9. Well, you can get 12 here. Okay. Nelson's saying this is nonsense, guys. Let's stop arguing about this. That doesn't amount to a hill of beans when we wait and we incorporate the banking function into our lives, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The banking function is the tailwind.
Yep.
Now, how fast was that wind going again, Kyle?
345 mile an hour. So if we can catch that tailwind.
And if we can add 100 miles an hour onto that.
Yeah.
Is that 445 miles an hour?
It sure is.
Does it matter if that plane can go 110 miles an hour?
Absolutely not.
The only way that you guys can control this, though, is getting into the banking business.
Yes.
Controlling the banking function in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't create that type of tailwind behind you with any type of investment. I don't care how good of an investor you are, even when you're educated, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is unbelievable.
Yes.
And dividend-paying whole life insurance, properly structured for the infinite banking concept, is the way that you can get into the banking business. Perform the banking function in your life. Okay, I think Nelson ends this good, that this is this never dawns on the financial gurus that this is a vehicle, that this is a place, this is something that every single person can do.
Yes. And maybe the benefit of the doubt, maybe they haven't heard about it. I don't know. But yeah, it's truly incredible when you can take control of the banking function.
Truly incredible. And as you were saying earlier too, sit down, have some patience and invest some time in learning about the infinite banking concept. Okay, this isn't an investment. Whole life insurance is not an investment, but you need to learn and understand how to use your whole life policy to implement the infinite banking concept. And all this stuff goes hand in hand.
Yeah, totally agree there.
So, okay, Kyle, anything else you would like to add before we get out of here?
Nope, I think we got her covered.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate all the time that you're giving us, and we hope you come back next time. Thank you.
This was the Cash Value Solutions Podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Check us out at cashvaluesolutions.com. And don't forget to tune in next week.